November 16th, 2022, mid-afternoon, West Texas. Near the tiny town of Mentone, the desert floor lurches, magnitude 5.4, one of the strongest earthquakes in Texas history. It was felt in El Paso, in Austin, in San Antonio, 400 miles away. It damaged a century-old building. Here's the strange part. Texas isn't supposed to be earthquake country. For most of the last century, the ground barely moved at all. Now, sensors record thousands of earthquakes across Texas every year. 5 of the state's 7 strongest quakes have struck since 2022. And scientists are certain they know why. This time, the force loading the faults isn't tectonic. It's us. This is how humans switched on earthquakes in Texas, and the proof that we may be able to switch them off. Start with the numbers. In 2015, Texas built TexNet, a network that has grown to over 150 seismometers listening statewide. What it heard was stunning. In 2022, Texas logged a record 246 quakes strong enough to feel. Counting the small ones, the Permian Basin produced over 8,000 quakes in 7 years. September 2024, a magnitude 5.1 near Midland rattles homes from Amarillo to San Antonio, a 500-mile span. February 2025, a 5.0 near Toya. May 2025, a 5.4 by the New Mexico border. One sensor recorded shaking stronger than gravity itself. Then, July 2026. The Panhandle, hundreds of miles from the swarm, was hit by its strongest quake in over a century. A county judge said his cat woke him before the shaking did. The sheriff had a darker worry: the pipelines. To see how strange this is, rewind. The strongest quake in Texas history was natural, magnitude 5.8, near Valentine in 1931. After that, almost nothing. For decades, Texas averaged a handful of noticeable quakes a year. Its crust was considered geologically boring. The faults are there, ancient fractures deep in the basement rock, but they'd been locked for roughly 300 million years. Faults older than the dinosaurs, silent since before Pangea broke apart. Something woke them up. One study examined every Texas quake since 1975 and found only about 13% were clearly natural. The rest trace back to a single industry. And to understand how, you have to follow the water. The Permian Basin is America's most productive oil field. But strictly speaking, it isn't mostly an oil field. It's a water field. Every barrel of oil brings up 3, 4, 5 barrels of ancient brine, seawater trapped underground for hundreds of millions of years. In places, the ratio reaches 10 to 1. Operators now handle more than 20 million barrels of this wastewater every day. And it's not water in any usable sense. It's up to 6 times saltier than the ocean. It carries radium leached from deep rock, far beyond drinking water limits, plus benzene, heavy metals, and toxic gas. You can't dump it in a river. Treating it costs double. The cheap option. So the industry does the simple thing. It drills disposal wells, more than 2,000 across the Permian, and pumps the water back underground. Some goes shallow, much goes deep, into ancient carbonate rock miles down, resting just above the basement faults. Since the shale boom began, roughly 35 billion barrels have gone down, and all that water has to push on something. Deep rock is full of pores and cracks, and the fluid inside pushes outward. Geologists call it pore pressure. A fault stays locked because the weight of miles of rock clamps it shut. Friction holds. nothing moves. But inject billions of barrels and pore pressure climbs. The water begins prying the fault's two faces apart, ever so slightly. The U.S. Geological Survey compares it to switching on an air hockey table. The puck isn't pushed, it just starts to float. And these faults were already stressed near breaking point for millions of years. They didn't need a shove, only a nudge. How small? Some Permian faults began slipping after a pressure rise of 52 pounds per square inch. Bicycle tire pressure. Worse, pressure travels. Quakes can strike 10 miles from the well that caused them, months, even years later. So proving the cause took years. Except, science already had the proof. 50 years earlier. Denver, 1962. At the Rocky Mountain Arsenal, the Army drills one of the deepest wells in America and injects chemical weapons wastewater. Within a year, Denver, no earthquake town, becomes one of the most seismically active places in America. A geologist named David Evans plots the quakes against the injection volumes. The curves match. Almost nobody believes him. The Army stops injecting in 1966. The next year, a 5.3 strikes anyway. The pressure was still spreading. Point made, the hard way. Then scientists did something remarkable. At a Colorado oil field called Rangeley, they ran the experiment on purpose. For 4 years, they raised and lowered fluid pressure in the wells and turned earthquakes on and off, like a switch. Texas had its own warnings. Quakes near Snyder in the 70s, tied to oil field flooding. East Texas, 2012, a 4.8 traced to disposal wells. Then Azle, 2014, 30 quakes in months in a town quiet for a century and a half. 900 furious residents packed the high school. They booed the state regulator, then rode buses to Austin. Texas hired its first seismologist, but the real lesson came from next door. Oklahoma used to average 2 noticeable quakes a year. Then, around 2009, its disposal wells began swallowing a rising flood of wastewater. By 2014, Oklahoma recorded 562 quakes of magnitude 3 or more. California, actual earthquake country, had 180. In 2015, it peaked, 903. Flat, quiet Oklahoma was now the earthquake capital of the lower 48. Some left scars. In 2011, a magnitude 5.7 near Prague wrecked 14 homes and buckled a highway in 3 places. A collapsing chimney crushed a woman's legs in her living room. She sued the well operators. And the state Supreme Court let the case stand. In 2016, a 5.8 near Pawnee became Oklahoma's strongest quake ever, and the strongest human-made earthquake documented anywhere on Earth. 2 months later, a 5.0 struck Cushing, 2 miles from the largest oil storage hub on the planet. It cracked half the historic downtown. Regulators finally moved. Oklahoma ordered deep injection cut by roughly 40%, 500,000 barrels a day, across 600 wells. Then everyone held their breath. Would the earthquakes actually stop? They did. 903 quakes in 2015, 623 the next year, then about 300, then under 200, then under 100. By 2021, 26, a 97% drop in 6 years. Turn down the injection, and the earth slowly goes quiet. Texas is now running the same experiment at many times. The water volume. The Railroad Commission, which, despite its name, regulates oil and gas, not trains, has drawn seismic response areas over the shakiest zones. Around Midland and Odessa, deep injection was suspended entirely. In the Culberson-Reeves zone, deep wells were ordered cut by roughly 2/3. And it's working. In that zone, quake rates have fallen about 2/3 since 2022. The Oklahoma playbook, replaying in real time. But remember Denver. Pressure already underground doesn't obey new rules. May 2025's magnitude 5.4 struck where injection had already been slashed. Regulators responded by suspending every remaining deep disposal permit in the area. A tripwire, written into the rules, had been crossed. And there's a twist. 20 million barrels a day still needs somewhere to go. Pushed out of the deep rock, operators went shallow. Shallow injection in the Delaware Basin rose 500%. Now, the pressure is building there instead. Radar satellites watch the desert floor bulging, up to 40 centimeters in places, as the ground literally inflates. It hunts for escape routes, century-old abandoned wells. In 2022, one blew a 100-foot brine geyser, fed by a disposal site 12 miles away. So what's the way out? Partly reuse. Over half this water is now recycled into fracking new wells instead of being buried. Texas is even testing desalination. Pilots have turned toxic brine nearly fresh. And in drought-stricken West Texas, water may be too precious to bury. The harder question is the ceiling. Some scientists argue a large enough fault, once unclamped, could run away. Past magnitude 6. No one knows for sure. The strongest induced quake on record is Oklahoma's 5.8. West Texas has already reached 5.4 twice. And most Texans aren't covered. Standard home insurance doesn't include earthquakes. In Texas, historically, why would it? Meanwhile, the shaking keeps spreading. South into the Eagle Ford, northeast toward Big Spring, and now up into the Panhandle. Step back, and this is a strange milestone. We've become a geological force, able to wake faults older than the dinosaurs. Not with bombs, not on purpose, just by quietly moving water, billions of barrels, from one layer of rock to another. But the same data carries hope. Denver proved we can start earthquakes. Rangeley proved we can control them. Oklahoma proved we can stop them. Now Texas has to prove we can do it at full industrial scale, while the ground keeps score. If this story was worth your time, subscribe for more real science behind the headlines. It genuinely helps the channel. And next time the ground in Texas trembles, remember, somewhere a valve is turning. Thanks for watching.